today's English session with an interesting discussion between Dr. Ratan Sharda and Dr. Anand Ranganathan. Author, columnist, and renowned TV panelist, Dr. Ratan Sharda has been awarded a PhD for his thesis on RSS. He has written 9 books, of which 7 are on RSS, 1 on Guru Nanak Dev, and 1 on disaster management. He has also translated 2 books about RSS and has edited and designed 12 other books. Ratan Sharda has traveled extensively in and outside India. He was an ERP consultant with a varied industrial experience for 2 decades. He was the founder secretary of Vishwa Kendra, Center for International Studies, Mumbai for 8 years. He is an advisor to many educational institutions and voluntary organizations. Dr. Anand Ranganathan obtained his BSc Honours degree in chemistry from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, after which he left on a Nehru Centenary Scholarship for Cambridge, UK, where he obtained his BA in Natural Sciences, his MA and his PhD. After a postdoctoral stint at Cambridge, Dr. Anand returned to India to join the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, where he supervised his lab for 16 years. In 2015, he joined the Special Center for Molecular Medicine, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, as an associate professor. His laboratory works in the area of directed evolution and pathogenesis with special emphasis on tuberculosis and malaria. Dr. Anand is now a consulting editor and columnist for Swarajya. He has written previously for News Laundry, DNA, and the News Minute. He has also authored 3 novels. Sri Ratan Sharda will now indulge in a conversation with Dr. Anand Ranganathan on their writings and the concept behind them.
It's on. All right. Thank you so much for this amazing hospitality. And also to the wonderful lady who's given some Mysore Pak. Thank you. Although I have to say that this is going to be a very freewheeling session, and if I knew the organizers really well, I would have requested them to switch off the lights because I might go to sleep in between. I've had about, how much of badam halwa did we? At least 250 grams of badam, amazing badam halwa. And Ratan had about another 250 grams of it, so.
No,
just part of it. Right.
I wanted to awake because he's a very dangerous man. You never know what is going to hit you.
But I promise.
Badam halwa, I'm sure that this will be a little sweeter conversation, because after this good fill of badam halwa, I don't fear him anymore. But I think he's been tamed by the halwa.
If I do sleep, I'll sleep not more than 30 seconds, so you can. But thank you so much again, Bharat, and all the organizers for this amazing excuse me, festival, literary festival, and it's a real joy. And over the next, I think we have about 40 minutes or so, I thought we would spend it discussing about, in general, about the art of writing and literature, and focus entirely on or substantially on Ratan's new book that has just been released, RSS, Conflict Revolution, sorry.
Conflict resolution.
Yes, as I said, please excuse the halwa badam. It was absolutely gorgeous, honestly. That badam halwa is the best in the world. Conflict resolution the RSS way. So can I begin, Ratan, by asking you about the way the book, and I've read the book. In fact, I have been fortunate enough to provide a quote for the book as well. It was really wonderful to know so much about, and I have to confess here that a lot of what I know, maybe 90 to 95% of my misgivings that I had about RSS, who doesn't? In fact, I would say even most of the RSS people also have misgivings about RSS. They should be the first people to read Ratan's book. But so it all started, I think, 4-5 years ago when we were just having a discussion and I was being critical of some policy or the other of RSS. And then Ratan was saying, no, this is the thing. I said, Kyo, tumne PhD kari RSS mein? He said, yes. And it's turned out to be right. So I've read now 3 of his books. regarding RSS, and they've really opened my eyes. And they've given me the confidence that I can walk up to an RSS guy and I can discuss, I can criticize RSS. And this is something which is amazing, that I can be really critical of, and I have. I mean, it's a public platform and I have criticized RSS. I have praised them as well. But now reading Ratan's books has given me the confidence to talk about facts that RSS did or did not do. And I've even quoted Sitaram Goyal to Mr. Ram Madhav on his face. It was quite embarrassing. But the fact is, I think that is what I have gleaned from Ratan's your books. So do you feel, let me begin by asking you, do you feel it was a very long, drawn-out process, this art of focusing on, what to tell about the RSS, given that there is so much that one could tell, but RSS itself doesn't want people to know?
Thanks, Anand, for this introduction and appreciation, so I can relax. Regarding the books, actually, I have been a Swayamsevak from childhood. And in between, I have been taking responsibility. In between, I'm out of responsibilities. So during one of the phases, always, when you were young, you did wonderful programs, you saw huge RSS programs, nothing was covered in the press, nothing came out. I remember one incident when there was a huge camp in UP with about 90,000 people, flawless, wonderfully organized. A report I see is about 4 or 5 hapless Swayamsevaks in their, undergarments taking bath under a tap. And this is the big, so nothing about the camp. And that is how RSS is presented or represented by the people. Such things used to, disturb that why it is not covered. Okay, RSS was what you call Prasiddhi Parangamukh, away from the publicity, did not want it till 1990. In fact, there was no media cell in RSS. And Guruji was very much against it, who was actually the guiding force when RSS, I would say, took rebirth in 1949 after the ban was lifted. And he said, just do your work, it will speak, don't get into argument with anybody. And I remember one incident during this partition. Of course, in partition, RSS Swayamsevaks lost in their lives, they saved families, they saved lakhs of people in Sindh, in Punjab, Jammu Kashmir, etc. And this was not really on the public platform. There is a book called, A.N. Bali's book called Now It Can Be Told. This book is by a professor from Lahore who saw everything. He was eyewitness to the entire partition process, how what Jinnah did, what Gandhi did. And he published a book in 1949, I think, foreword by Master Tara Singh. And the book then disappeared. I am told that book was removed from the bookshelves by Nehru and his groups. So book was not available. When I was doing my research, I got a copy of it. So I came to know. So these people wanted the release of the book in Jalandhar, I think, when Guruji had gone. He refused. And in that book, it is not RSS book. It is just one chapter where it says Friends in Need. That is all about RSS. Otherwise, it's a wonderful book. Now it has been reprinted by Prabhat. It's a book you should read. You will understand the exact situation there with a lot of data and information by that professor, A.N. Bali. So he said, did you serve your mother last night? Did you take care of her? He said, yes. The person who wanted the book to be released, not A.N. Bali. And he said, but I didn't read in the newspaper. He said, why should it be in the newspaper? Exactly, he said. He said, why should, when you serve your motherland, when you serve a family, why it should be in the news? It's part of your duty. And he said, in fact, in one of the meetings to the RSS Swayamsevak, they were all young people. RSS average age at that time is 25, 26. He said, I know I have not appreciated you. I have not, really given you compliments for the work you have done, but that is your duty. What I am doing is my duty. So why publicity? From that position to the position in 1990 when media cell was open, till that time everybody had a field day, criticizing RSS, calling fascist and whatnot. So these were very costly years, I would say, from 1949 when Congress went hammer and tongue against it, leftists, communists, etc. And RSS did not respond. I was born in that era when I was working in RSS. It always hurt me why nothing comes out. So then when Mohan Bhagwat became the Sarsanga Chalak, there was a news item in Times of India saying Mr. Bhagwat has become Sarsanga Chalak and RSS being secretive organization, etc., etc. So I wrote an article, what is so secretive about RSS? It was appreciated well. Before that, I had edited nearly 10 books. I had written many articles, but book never came to my mind. So that idea clicked and I wrote the book Secrets of RSS. Idea was to tell people what RSS is. I was not in a regular work of RSS at that time. So basically it's thinking, it's work on the field, it's physical organization, how it organizes people. So that was the starting of the journey. And then I think more needs to be told. So I kept on writing, then slowly new ideas came up. The first book was written as I was 54-year-old. And this is the 7th book. So it has been a continuous journey. I try to cover different angles. There is hardly any repetition in the book. And in fact,
You don't look a day older than 40.
thank you so much. So Guruji was asked once some question. He said, after working in Sangha for 20 years, I think a little about RSS I know now. So it's an organization with huge presence. 60,000 regular shakhas, weeklies, Masik Milan as you call it, different organizations, 36 all India organizations, 130,000 seva works, then work in every possible dimension of whether labor, whether religion. So to understand it is to understand these people. This organization is totally built on people. It is not built on intellectual heft. It is not built on huge thinking. If you read Dr. Hedgewar, he was supposed to be speaking from the heart. I know of 2 cases of people who have written that we met Dr. Hedgewar and we simply surrendered to him. And he was a huge man, black with pockmarks, and he would hardly give speeches. But his dedication, right from a revolutionary to Congress worker to RSS founder, he founded RSS at the age of 34. All this has created a kind of very different organization which needs to be told. I think RSS has been, one is that RSS is lacking in communicating. Second is, as I put in the first book, the wheel of secrecy is put by the media also, as if it will hurt people. So let not Anand know what is RSS, it will hurt him, he will get corrupted. Also, we should not allow people to know about RSS. So that is the reason I think I always wrote for the people outside RSS circle.
So here, I mean, I would...
One more thing I avoid, generally I avoid using RSS terminologies in my books because they are very complex. They are typically too Indian, Sanskritized, etc. And people don't understand half the time. It's like talking to people in Latin and they know English. So that is the reason I try to keep the terminology which is commonly accepted. For example, RSS doesn't use words India. I use word India or Indians. So these are some of the ideas that I work on books.
Yeah, no, I mean, so the way I've structured this discussion hopefully would be very fruitful for the audience as well, is to ask, obviously I always ask very controversial questions, Ratan, but let me give you a glimpse of, and this will lead to a question. And in fact, you've already asked yourself that question, this need for, I think, I would say rather in today's media age, unnecessarily self-deprecating. That is how I would put it if I want to be very gentle about the RSS. Because let me give you one example. Tavleen Singh, she, during the first wave, I think this was, in fact, during the second wave, last May, when the gurdwaras were arranging for langars, she tweeted that, look at India's so-called largest NGO, RSS, is not doing anything when you have Khalsa Aid distributing cylinders and having langars. So, and that was her tweet of that. In fact, there were a couple of articles written. Quint wrote an article on that, obviously. NDTV gave that tweet a lot of traction. That tweet circulated for a day, and then I did some research on my own because RSS kept quiet, even though RSS has a Twitter handle, even Mr. Bhagwat has a Twitter handle. And this is what I tweeted. 507,656 RSS volunteers set up COVID relief at 92,656 locations, distributing 46.63 million food packets, opening 483 treatment centers. This was in the first wave. Did it the same in the second wave. Help giver and help seeker neither give nor seek ideology, only help. And what I mean to say is, yes, I mean, there is an applause, but it is, I see it as an applause not for me, but as a man who had to dig up these numbers. It took about a day, and God knows how many RSS brochures I had to go through it. The question, Ratan, is that if the RSS had a PR machine or an organization, they could have dug up these numbers, within half an hour of Tavleen's tweet and corrected that false narrative. That false narrative was not corrected, and God knows, maybe it went beyond our shores. I mean, my tweet is read mostly by Indians, so maybe it went beyond, and people abroad are thinking that here is an organization that takes a lot of donations from foreigners, and it's not doing anything during COVID. So don't you think this is a problem? I mean, it is a good habit to be self-deprecating, but you can't be in today's age.
See, first of all, RSS doesn't take any aid from outside. That is one. So just to clarify. But in this case, I would say in case of COVID, RSS Seva Karya Vibhag has been very active. They were tweeting numbers, they were tweeting graphics, they were writing, even I wrote articles. And it was known, I don't know whether, what happens, as I said, that people simply don't want to acknowledge. So all the numbers were there, all the figures were there after the figures came. I think within a month or so, figures started coming in. We had figures from Mumbai, we had figures from Delhi and all over. And it takes time.
In fact, a lot of vaccination drives were also
Yes.
done by.
So a lot of data has to come. See, we can't circulate, made up figures. So all the figures that are tweeted by Seva Bharati are figures which are confirmed by the people on the field, that we have done this, we have done that. And these were very clearly available. I remember I talked to TV channels, do some coverage. Half of them did not do it. Only a few did. And I would say in 2-3 English channels, I saw 2-3 minutes of coverage. Why it happens? I think there are still people in the media who still rule the roost to feel that it is harmful to give publicity to RSS. Whether it comes from the top, whether it comes from the managers in the middle who come from the Jamia Millia kind of milieu, I don't know. But definitely this time at least I would not say we were wanting. We were wanting in the earlier times. Like for example, what we did in Jammu Kashmir, nobody knows what we did in. There are people asking questions, what have we done in Jammu Kashmir? And I wrote an article, in book there is of course a whole chapter. I'm going to write an article that right from 47, 48, RSS has been actively involved in Jammu Kashmir. That is how finally reached this stage. But it's a way of, there is one is typically anti-RSS group. There are people who believe they are more Hindu than the RSS, who are more Savarkarite than the Savarkar himself. And they try to create a kind of environment that RSS is not doing much. That is the area where we can't rebut everybody. I would not. In fact, I respond to Tavleen once in a while. That also goes viral. But sometimes you feel you are wasting your time talking to them. People send me articles from South Africa or US, please respond to this. I said, I can't respond. You have to respond from your own local place. So yes, there is a mispropaganda, but I would say now at least as far as Seva is concerned, RSS goes out of it to create small videos. There is a Twitter handle called Seva Gatha. You should follow it. Every day there is a wonderful human interest story. How a small girl finally rose to become XYZ. So there are handles, but there is no marketing approach to social media. So I would not say how to boost it, put some money, boost Twitter, all that is not done. So that is the reason you don't see that much circulation. But as far as RSS is concerned, it shares. For example, I talked about resolution. RSS used to send resolutions to all the media houses. Nobody thought of reading them. Nobody thought of commenting on them. Nobody has even analyzed them, including RSS, I would say. So as a Swayamsak, that is how this curiosity rose that I need to, because these are only policy statements that are available. So yes, there is a lag, but I think it is not the willingness of RSS anymore. It is one thing, not to spend money for these things, but people individually do it. And there is a traction. But I think the larger media, the so-called mainstream media, has also to open the eyes. I mean, if there is a wonderful work being done by XYZ volunteer organization, why not RSS? Everybody knows it does it. The TV people come and they interview, but they don't print. So there is some internal, I think, still there is some control where we can't help it, I would say.
So this leads me to this question, and here I want you to wear a communist hat, if you can. You've never been a communist, although I'm from JNU. By the way, since morning, I've had very many comments made by esteemed speakers about JNU. I want to clarify that I'm on the other side of the Iron Curtain of JNU, so please don't deride JNU that much. So if you were to wear a leftist hat, which would be torn and not washed for a month or whatever it may be. Um, why do
Shaded,
you
I would say.
shaded, red in color? Why do you think are people scared of the RSS? What is it that RSS wants that scares people? I'm not asking you to be a rational right winger. I'm asking you to be a hopelessly irrational, illogical, chauthi fail communist. Can you do that?
See, I had very good relations with communist friends since college days. In fact, one of my
मैं
friends.
उस पे भी आ रहा हूँ, but वो बाद में
So, one of them is because I came to know he has become a union leader. There is another professional union leader sitting in Delhi. So leftists become NGOs, then they have wonderful bungalows and cars, and so they have their own way of running their life, serving the people. So we were discussing like that, sitting during emergency, and I said ultimately it's going to be ideological war between communist and RSS, because these are the two ideologies that are today. Ultimately, these are two ideologies. Everything else is not an ideology. Congress is not an ideology. No other party has an ideology. So ultimately, two ideological ends is RSS, which is rooted in nation, and Communist Party.
Sorry to interrupt you, but because you said NGO, here is the data. And because I am a data man, so in India, there is one doctor per 1282 Indians. There is one policeman per 943 Indians. But there is one NGO per 400 Indians.
Actually, I should not ask you trade secret. Is always I am surprised the kind of data you dig up. Whether Anand Ranganathan has his own archive, like Mitrokin archives, or he has a knack for mining data. It's hugely surprising. I also try to dig up data, but I'm nowhere near him. Just 10% of his. Even then, when BJP spokesperson called me once, he said, "Sharda ji, kahan se data late ho? Mujhe bhi de do." So I had to give him data.
As I say, Anna data Mahaprabhu. But so, yeah, you were saying about
so
what scares them.
So it is basically one ideology which is a rented ideology coming from outside. Communism has no base in India. It is Communist Party of India. It is not Indian Communist Party. So there are Communist Party of Pakistan, Communist Party of India. They all seek inspiration either from fatherland of Russia or comrade Mao or today North Korea also. So these people always look for inspiration outside. They have no roots in India because Marx once said that, he talked hopelessly about India. So probably they took the inspiration and they said, "Bhaiya, India mein kuch nahi hai. India is rootless. India has nothing to offer." So this inferiority complex of India, totally denying Indian knowledge system, India's nationhood. As we all know that Adhikari wrote a document saying that India is not one nation, it should be broken in 17 nations. And this was submitted to cabinet mission of British in 1946. So with this background, when they don't faith in Indian culture, because once you use word religion, they become anti-religion. So they believe if you want to control Indian society and bring in revolution, the bonding factor of Hinduism must be killed. The bonding factor of Hinduism must be brought down in a way that people start hating themselves, start hating their belief system. It may be Shaivite, it may be Shakta, whatever it is. So they tried this for long years. But somehow the roots are so deep, they have not been successful. While on the other side, RSS says that India is perennial nation. It has got at least 10,000-year-old history, which is documented. I haven't talked of undocumented. People talk of lakhs of years. I don't believe them till it is proven. So this fight is between people, I often say, who said that India as a nation was born on 15th August 1947, or India was never a nation, vis-a-vis people who say that India was a perennial nation. So naturally, these are two ideologies will finally struggle. So communists, having found that this is the roadblock to their victory in India, the supposed revolution in India, naturally they hate Sanghis, and then they ridicule them. They say they have no ideology, they have no intellect, etc., etc. But basically, this is their fear, that because they have kept, RSS has kept, the Hindu Renaissance and continuously put a society into action. So RSS says we are not an organization of the Hindus, we are organizations in the society. So being in the society, if you see how it has evolved over the last 90 years, which was the topic of my another book, that from an organization of one shakha in Nagpur, it has now become a mass movement where people come and say, where can I join? What can I do for you? So this approach of Indians getting involved in national renaissance is what is disturbing communists, because communists want a broken society. New Left's entire philosophy is based on broken society, break families, break society, break nation. Tukre is not a rhetoric. It's their basic belief. So this is why there is a fight between RSS and communists.
So as I say, there are only three places where communism exists in India: Kerala, media, and the JNU. So,
Jadavpur.
huh?
Jadavpur University.
Oh, Jadavpur also, okay. 3.5 places. But here is where I come with my truckload of criticism. That very recently, I think third in command of RSS gloated. It's not that he blurted out by mistake, he gloated that we are left wing when it comes to economics and finance. I think for a modern country like India, that was a devastating comment. And it angered me, and it should anger every sensible Indian. And here, I'm not even bringing religion in or Hinduism in or something. For the country to progress, you cannot appropriate left-wing economics, especially when you know the example is in front of you. I mean, in science we say, please do not repeat a failed experiment, because that would mean that is not a condemnation of the experiment, that is a condemnation of you. You are a failure. You've seen Venezuela, you've seen, when China was totally communist, you've seen Cuba, you've seen all those systems where left-wing economics was so-called prospering, Soviet Union. How can in today's day and age RSS say that, look, we are actually proponents and we love left-wing economics?
In fact, I have said it much before, the third highest authority in RSS.
The first authority said it?
No, whatever you,
Okay.
who are quoted. See, I have studied Shri Guruji's view on economy, which is before Integral Humanism was written by Deen Dayal Upadhyay. I have read Dattapan Tegadi also, I have written a long essay also on that. See, right-wing, left-wing is actually misnomer in India. It doesn't fit into Indian cultural milieu. Right and left-wing, basically, if you talk of economics, and if you talk of, let us say, British right and left for different reason, there is something called conservative, there is something called liberal, there was also question of economics, and also question of culture. So there was religiosity where you had extreme position, that was right-wing. So when you talk of right-wing politics, you talk about jihadis, you talk about extreme church, conservative church,
but
etc.
if
Then on
we
economics,
yeah,
yes,
on,
coming to economics.
Yeah.
Deen Dayal Upadhyay wrote a treatise on integral humanism, and it is called the third way. It is not that RSS is in any way at all copying the left economics, not at all. In fact, the biggest critique of RSS about communism, when the Dattopant Hengdi predicted its fall in 1960, when it was on the peak, that it doesn't address the spiritual hunger of the human being. It doesn't satisfy, it only talks of materialism. So the difference between the capitalism also talks about material well-being, socialism, communism also talks of the well-being of the material well-being. Both of them, difference is who owns the means of production. Capitalism says the individual has the means of production, is absolute right to have the means of production, and the communists say that it should be state control. But ultimately it is same, beyond there is nothing. And having seen the end result of the capitalism as well as communism as was coming, RSS said the third way is that you follow Hindu way of life. I will not get to details, but RSS does not support state control. RSS does not support nationalization. RSS believes in small scale industry, believes in decentralized economy. So when you talk of these ideas, these are not rightist, right?
No,
So
I mean,
these
so
are not right wing, because absolute, we don't talk of absolute right to capitalism or individual to control any level of wealth. We don't support and either state control or totally free hand to industry. RSS does talk of some kind of moderation, but basically approach of small scale industry, decentralization, importance to villages, not to large industries. On that sense, if you say, I would say it is not right wing in the true sense.
But
It
Ratan,
will
sorry,
be a little on the left.
Yeah, but
so whether you like it, then the crux of the matter was that unless you fulfill the needs, spiritual need of the person, he will never be satisfied. So lust or hunger for material satisfaction will never result in a happy society. With that idea, that integral humanism was written. And human being cannot be cog in the wheel of either industry or a communist party. Again, there we differ from the communist and capitalist thinking. So if we go deep, when we say left wing or we say center of, left of the center, it does not mean at all that we follow communism. It does not mean at all we talk of totally uncontrolled capitalism.
I would be a terrible anchor because I'm embarrassed when I want to interrupt him. But so what you're saying is complete antithesis of what the person who shall remain nameless, third in command, said. Because he was clearly for state control, and he even gave an example. He said that the vaccination, the price should be decided by the government. The scientists and the private companies who've made the vaccine would have no control in deciding how much they should charge for it. And he is, of course, against the GMO. He's against all sorts of, he is for nationalizing banks. So what you say is what RSS stands for. That guy is third in command of RSS. So there is a dichotomy there.
See, RSS has got so many.
Either you are second in command of RSS, we don't know. This is so much for RSS being a secretive organization. He is number 2 in RSS. So he supersedes number 3. Then it's fine.
See, I would say RSS has not taken any clear economic policy, policies.
No, come on. Now,
Just
this is what.
wait a moment.
No, I
Listen-
won't.
listen to me.
I have to interrupt.
सुन तो लो ना,
नहीं,
सुन तो
नहीं,
लो।
सुनने में
आगे तो सुनो।
नहीं, अभी
आप तो
नहीं।
अर्नब मत बनो,
नहीं,
अर्नब मत बनो।
अभी मैं लड़ाई
I'll tell you.
I so wanted
see,
this. I really want to get up.
Swadeshi economics or Swadeshi Jagran Manch is supposed to formulate the structure of Indian economic systems. It has woefully fallen short, I say many times.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and then there is Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, which has its own economic policies based on what Dattapan told them or what he explained to everybody. And he was the one who actually expanded the integral humanism of Deen Dayal Upadhyay, because Deen Dayal Upadhyay died he was killed by the time after his first lectures were given. So those ideas evolving, and those ideas definitely, I would not say GMO seed opposition is not because it's left or right. It is because of ecological risk that we have seen, ecological disaster that people have seen. There are a lot of scientists who are talking of that. You may not. I mean, you are a scientist. I won't, contradict what you believe. But there are people like Vandana Shiva who have a different viewpoint. And she is not a Sanghi at all. So there are viewpoints.
I don't know who she is. She's not a scientist also. But
oh, so there are people who have done international studies. They have their own views. So let us not mix what is ecological or scientific issue vis-a-vis what is purely economic policies. But if you look at the economic policies of Modi, I would say he comes closest to what Deen Dayal Upadhyay wanted, to reach the last person, to satisfy his problems first before you talk of other things. The trickle-down effect doesn't work in the way it has been explained by the capitalist theorists. So to reach out to the last man in the queue is what Deen Dayal Upadhyay talked about. That is what Sangh talks about, and that is what Modi is doing. And Modi is not nationalizing anything. And Modi comes from a very strong RSS route as a pracharak for decades. So I would say ideas are evolving. I would not contradict who has said it. I may differ from him. The beauty is that in RSS you can differ. You may not take a decision for months if you don't agree. In fact, I was telling yesterday in the book release function that I have written 7 books. At least out of those 3-4 books, I have criticized RSS even in the last book in many places. Not a single RSS adhikari has ever told me, Ratan, tumne kya likha? Not once. They have not even said that your criticism is wrong. So we have a freedom of discussion. I think this idea is still evolving. But I am definitely saying that we are a little center of the because that is a Hindu philosophy. The philosophy of temples, what is temples? It is not capitalism. The economy around temple, the entire economy that revolved around temples is typical Hindu invention. Nobody else has it. You cannot put in right or left wing.
totally capitalism.
No, it is not capitalism. No.
Welfare state is part of capitalism.
No, I am talking temple economics, where temple becomes the center of the entire town, entire economy. So that smallest level of shopkeeper or smallest level of person who makes money out of it, how art is maintained, art is not maintained by the state, it is maintained by the temple authority.
So where is the state control?
It is not there.
That's what I'm saying.
Huh.
So it is not.
So, but it is not even capitalism because it is not controlled by some capitalists. It is controlled by trust. It's controlled by the community. So you have to look at the Indian model away from capitalism and away from communism. Then you will find answers.
So two things here, and I absolutely love this discussion with Ratan. And you may think it is heated up, not at all. We are the best of friends. We love a bit of a punch up. And I don't know why, these damn Norwegians are so overrated at being called ace negotiators, because he is, according to me, he should be called wherever negotiation is important or required. Russia, Ukraine bhi ye jaake, I think, negotiate kar sakte hain. That is what his conflict resolution is. So, even though इनके मन में लग रहा होगा वो कौन है जो नंबर 3 जिसने सब contradict कर दिया मुझे. But he wasn't wrong. He wasn't. So two things. No, before I forget.
Example, just a moment. There is an example of LGBT.
I'm forgetting all my questions, Ratan. But anyway.
But I want to confuse you. So there was a question of LGBT which came up, criminalization of laws, and also there was heated discussion going on. I went on TV, I think NDTV. And I said that entity, we believe.
Are you paying penance for that?
So, no, I said Tritriya Prakriti. I talked about that. I talked about how Ayurveda recognizes, the sexual orientation of a child based on how it is born, etc. And so she said, but is this RSS view? I said, it's not RSS view. It's the Hindu view of life. It's the view of science. And we have been talking about for years. So RSS would say what the Hindu scriptures say, what our knowledge system says. She was totally surprised, and then this guy, Karan Thapar, was shocked. He said, RSS has changed the view. I said, there are some views. The issue came, I discussed what is there in our knowledge system. And after 3 weeks, Dattaji Hosbale said the same thing. So it is not that we differ, we come from the same thinking, but on a particular issue, somebody may have said something. As I said, we have open forum, we do talk. In fact, when Mohanji made the statement about if we don't have the Muslims, there is no Hindutva, the way he talked about Khan DNA, I wrote a small note to him about what I liked, what I did not like. And he acknowledged it. So there is a continuous churn, there is continuous discussion, but I would say economic policy has not yet been defined by RSS, including Swadeshi Jagran Manch, Bharatiya Majdoor Sangh. They have their own views. Bharatiya Majdoor Sangh Labor Union, there is Laghu Udyog Bharati, which takes care of the small scale industry. And I would say, because RSS is not in the ruling, RSS doesn't govern, it need not have a economic policy, but people influenced by it should have policies.
Ratan, here is this Laghu Udyog Bharati, and I think it is this or some other labor organization. I'll come to the Swadeshi Jagran.
Small scale industry.
Right.
And BMS is labor union.
Right. So do you know that recently when the Modi government removed 400 stringent labor laws, the first opposition was not by CPIM, was by...
Yeah, I understand.
So, that's why I'm saying it is of paramount importance for RSS to have a formulated, of course you can keep on revisiting it, but you have to formulate an economic and labor policy. You can't say for 70 years we haven't really a defined policy, because that would lead to confusion in the government,
Anand,
which is what is happening.
Humanism was sought to be founded when Guruji said, we know that capitalism, communism doesn't work in India, so we have to have our own philosophy. So he told Dindayal Upadhyay, please go ahead and study it. So he studied, and integral humanism as a philosophy was created. Marx also only created a philosophy. There are different models on the same Marxism principles. Soviet Russia is different, China is different, and whoever called himself communist is different. Indian communists, of course, have no idea how to run. But having said this, so Sangha also created a philosophy, integral humanism, which was expounded further by Bharatiya Majdoor Sangh founder Dattopant. To take it further, you required much more work. I would acknowledge it has not been done to the level required. But to say RSS, it is also evolving. Like you talked about Swadeshi, in 1998 or 99, Swadeshi Jagran Manch and went, they criticized Advani ji heavily. We didn't like it. I was also I didn't like it. So where to take the step forward, where to oppose, where to criticize, views always evolve. So what is submitted by somebody about RSS viewpoint will change over a period of time. And there is continuous consultancy, there is continuous discussion, but the requirement to go beyond Dattopant Thengdi is still there. It has to be done. But definitely, as I said, we are on a path which is different from capitalism and communism.
Right. So when you talked about Narendra Modi just now, that he is not for nationalizing, in the last 8 years now, the only thing that has been privatized, the only company is Air India. Other than that, not a single company has been privatized. The only talk of not just privatization, but basically government earning money from selling off the assets has been for a public sector asset to be sold to another public sector asset. So basically family junk silver is being transferred from the left pocket to the right pocket. LIC ends up buying a lot of stuff, Coal India, all those things. So there is not even a hint of that we will move away from the status quo that was popularized and in fact cemented by Congress governments. So when that is not Hindu, how is this Hindu system?
You are talking of governance now. You are not talking of RSS. I can't comment on governance. Policy has been made to decentralize or to denationalize or privatize, etc. The problem with that, why it is not being done, is in the domain of finance ministries and domain of the governance. RSS has not opposed it. RSS never supported nationalization of banks, let me tell you. When the banks were nationalized, RSS and their wings opposed it. To say somebody says now we must nationalize, I don't know whether you have misinterpreted him or whether the statement was not made properly, but definitely RSS never supported nationalization. Control has never been criticized. Now, what are the problems, what are the hurdles of the Modi government?
Let me clarify. That person said, I am not for privatizing or denationalizing the banks.
But it is happening, no? RSS is a policy statement. RSS
Which bank has been denationalized?
RSS has not made any statement against what Modi government has decided. So that the official position is not opposing it. Somebody can say something. I can make a lot of comments.
You are so clever.
What's clever? I mean, it's a natural
No, but
thing.
let's be honest.
If government cannot remove the hurdles of privatization, you cannot blame RSS for that. RSS never said don't do it.
So let me give you one pertinent
the
example.
willingness of the government, the willingness of the government to do something it has decided to, whether it's due to economic compulsions, whether it's due to some other legal issues, that is for them to, figure out.
Yeah, that's not Mr. Mohan Bhagwat calling to end the, okay. No, but let me give you another example, Ratan, and I think this would make things very...
You're going to talk about my book, I think.
No, as I said, we are
trying to create conflict rather than conflict resolutions.
But so when you talked of, okay, again now, बीच में तुमने ये वो डाल दिया कि we are talking of governance, not RSS, but when you did mention that Modi's philosophy is to take reforms or development to the last person, 4 days ago, the Supreme Court, in fact, you criticized on it, I was incensed by it. The Supreme Court report said that 86% of the farmer organization wanted these farm reforms. We are a banana republic. So, who has apologized for this? Has Prime Minister Modi apologized? Has RSS demanded that let us roll back the repeal because 86% farmers wanted this? Where do we go, Ratan?
See, one is RSS does not comment on governance as a routine. Please go through all the resolutions, go through all the statements made by RSS. It doesn't get into day-to-day governance at all. It does not comment on governance and policy issues. It has passed a resolution this year in APBS about giving importance to self-employment, small-scale industry, cooperatives and all that. It's purely economic resolution after many years. So there is economic resolution which you should read, which is typically not capitalist, nor it is communist. So it has passed a clear resolution about how economic growth will happen. That is different from what government is doing now. Right now, idea is to persuade the government to follow the path. Now, and if you remember, RSS, its Kisan wing, Bharatiya Kisan Sangh, everybody supported the bill. They went and tried to educate people, in the fields. They went to the farmers to explain them what it is. We know that one small section of Punjab farmers who instigated a few in the western UP created a ruckus. Again, that was purely governance issue. You cannot interfere in that area. You can educate people in what RSS tried to do with whatever means it had. Beyond that, to punch Modi government saying, "Bhaiya maafi mango, tumne kya nahi kiya, kya nahi kiya," it's not really. It should not do it. I would say RSS keeps away from governance. It's a good thing. The day RSS starts messing up with the governance, it will lose its vitality. It will also, destroy the credibility of the government.
Is it to do? So what you're saying is RSS doesn't really comment on the political matters that much. Do you think that is historical? If you remember, because Patel, that was one of the conditions that were set for.
No, That
It's
is not
nothing
the,
to do with that?
there was no condition in the lifting of the ban. You read my book, you read any book.
Yes.
There was no condition at all. Guruji refused to give any condition. They asked some questions. Guruji responded to each and every question that what its role. Even before ban had not come, before Nehru was fulminating to put a ban before Gandhi's assassination, he had said, I'll crush RSS, etc. That time also Guruji made a statement somewhere in 47, I think, because after partition, RSS was very popular because of his work and hugely popular, and Nehru used to get very disturbed with that. And BBC commented that only person who can compete in popularity with Nehru is Guruji. With that background,
He
wanted
banned
to,
the RSS organizer.
so he wanted to ban.
No, he banned it.
Yes, but
That is one
before
of the
that, I am
bans.
talking before that.
Okay.
In fact, you may not remember, there are at least 3 resolutions passed by different Pradesh Congress committees to ban RSS before actual assassination happened. And there were cases put up against RSS volunteers in UP about some riots and all, nothing worked out. So there is a continuous effort to do it. So Guruji said, people are, people feel that RSS will join politics. They should not feel threatened. We are not at all interested in politics. We don't want to enter political arena. Even during the ban, when young people like Bala Sahib Dera said we'll have to form political party, K.R. Malkani started writing in organizer, Guruji did not support it. Even when Shyama Prasad Mukherjee came to seek support for his party, Bharatiya Janata Sangh, Guruji was reluctant. It was only younger comrades who said, see, nobody listens to us. When there was ban, nobody supported us. So please, we should take part in politics. That is why he agreed to give some volunteers or pracharaks to Bharatiya Janata Sangh. So with this background, if we see that RSS knows that politics is just one part of the huge national life. You cannot totally focus and put your energy on political part unless your society changes, unless people change. No politics will make a difference. We have seen that. After independence, we had society totally dedicated to the nation building, but politicians were not.
But here, if I can add, you see, because we have 44% of our 515 million strong labor force, 44% is involved in agriculture. 82% of all Indian households are dependent on agriculture. So when you say there are things beyond politics, I would say talking of agriculture, wanting agriculture reforms is something that is intrinsic to the development of India, to the development and well-being of every Indian. And if RSS, which is definitely a nationalist organization, wants to do well for India, it has to think of those 83% households that would have benefited from the farm laws. So now when they were repealed, why is it, and it knows that 86% of the farmer organizations wanted these farm laws, but they were silent. They were not on the streets protesting that we want them. That is why Supreme Court didn't hear them. But now that we know the truth, don't you think it is imperative on an organization that wants well for India, to do well for India, India to do well, should take this up and say that, look, we are not concerned about 3 million arhatiyas or middlemen in Punjab, but we are concerned about 44% of our labor force. We are the RSS, we want these reforms. This is the only way where India can frog leap, and so many nations, and the quickest way to a middle income economy. Don't you think it is imperative upon RSS to do that?
See, a lot of things are not shouted on the rooftops, they have worked. For example, we talk of temple control, there has been a lot of discussion. You have been shouting, we have been shouting, I have been talking about it. We don't know that there are discussions going on with acharyas. Last time when I came to Chennai, next door there was a meeting going on for 2 days with Acharya Sabha, with very knowledgeable RSS people, Vishwa Parishad people, how to take it forward. If the temples are decontrolled, what happens to the management of the temples? Because there are so many kinds of ownerships. There is no noise about it. But there are continuous discussions going over the last 2-3 years. I'm very sure it will happen. But we need to have definite social ways of working out. If it is a community temple, what happens? If it is a private temple, what happens? It's a temple of a particular sampradaya, what happens? Similarly, when you talk of farm changes, these changes have to be educated, and on that RSS always keeps on working. So rather than shouting or rather than declaring intent in the newspapers and making comments, RSS works on the field silently trying to change the people's perception. You talked agriculture.
So do you think state ke through aayega?
Just a moment. RSS has been working for the agriculture improvement for last so many years. Organic farming, small scale irrigation projects. People talk about large scale irrigation projects. If you go to Maharashtra, the most successful was Shivar, which was basically digging of small ponds, reviving the small rivers and nalas. It was done by Devendra Fadnavis. So that improvement at the very last level of, I would say, rural life, rural development, and various kind of farming techniques, teaching them the various farming techniques, alternatives, all these things were done by small micro irrigation, small scale irrigation, on which RSS people are working. So working at the social level without tam jam and without noise is one thing, and which RSS has special wing for the farmers also. That is different. Educating people is another field where RSS has been continuously educating people, educating different stakeholders. I would not be surprised if we are told that there are organizations who went and met these farmers, talked to them, but it was totally politically motivated agitation, which was in the hand of people who wanted to create ruckus around it. You know that
the
very
nation
well.
suffered.
Yes, definitely. But then answer is to create conciliation.
See,
When I talk of
you mentioned Mr.
when I
Fadnavis.
talk of resolution, you have to reconcile people's interests and slowly bring them to a common table. I think I would rather, admit today that when farm bills were introduced, it needed much more open discussion in the Lok Sabha before it became a law. If people wanted it to go to select committee, nothing was done for 20 years, let it go to select committee, but give a deadline, because it gave an excuse to people saying that we were not heard. And now if you look at the Supreme Court report, there are some minor corrections in the farm law which could have been easily incorporated had people been heard. So pushing through the law may be one of the reasons, purely my personal view. It could have taken a little more time. It would have come out better. But the people who want to stop any development, they want to oppose every Modi move, would still have opposed. I can still say that. So whether this could have been done, I don't know. But any policy of Modi will be opposed. It will be criticized. Ruckus will be created. And somehow to make people with their anarchy. Now see, what was the reason for opposition? Not one clause, not one comma, full stop hurt anybody. But we had a huge agitation.
See, this much is clear that everything that Modi proposes will be opposed, because the classic example was building of the toilets was opposed because they said women go to the fields at 6 a.m. in the morning and that is their bonding time. So Modi by making these toilets is creating animosity between women because they're not being friendly. So if they can oppose that, then they can. Yes. But you mentioned Fadnavis, and let me tell you how the nation suffers ultimately. We are pontificating here, we are talking, and you're giving all the correct answers. You've answered everything, so I'm very happy with you. But sugarcane. Let me take the example of sugarcane and how devastating this whole concept of sugarcane is. India is the world's second largest producer of sugarcane. Every year, India produces 350 billion kilograms. Sugarcane takes 9% of the cultivated area, but requires 78% of the irrigation water. Okay? It is the most water-intensive crop. The amount of water required for cultivating sugarcane is equivalent to, and I've calculated this, equivalent to 10 Ganga Sagar dams, 1 quadrillion liters. 1 quadrillion liters. And what happened to sugar prices? In the last 6 years, they have halved. Who has lost? India has lost. When politicians guarantee the equivalent of MSP, it's not called MSP for sugarcane, it's something else, MAP or something, SMP. They say it with pride that we have given this to the farmers. Fadnavis wanted to change that. He brought in a law that no farmer can just arbitrarily start sugarcane cultivation. You have to get not only from the government, you have to get it from the courts as well. You have to get an affidavit. And what happened? Within 6 months, I won't take the name of a very famous sugar lobby politician, but the thing was thrown out. So ultimately, Ratan, who suffers? That is the question.
See, then
data sabke paas hai.
Yes.
Solution kya hai?
Haryana government has gave incentive to people to change their cropping pattern. That is one positive step that Haryana government has taken, though Khattar is, it's simply, I would say, slammed by everybody left and right. But this is the way out, that you provide incentives for farmers to change the cropping pattern itself. As you rightly pointed out, Fadnavis wanted to do it, and there are vested interests because they have guaranteed income, they have guaranteed price, and sugar mill owners are rich, but sugar mills are bankrupt in Maharashtra. At one time, Maharashtra was truly a cooperative model where farmers prospered in the time of Vasantdada Patil, but now it has become totally, I would say, money-making racket. Hundreds of crores are siphoned off, and they have huge interest there, and because the farmers get their, some benefit they get, they don't speak up. And it was an area which was desert, it was water deficient area, monsoon shadow zone area. So at one time it served the purpose. To change that, we need a politics of development in the way Modi or Fadnavis are the represent. Unfortunately, we have disruptive politics. We have politics which wants to extract juice of every possible conflict. So the approach of RS has been to avoid conflict, take people along, explain to them. It may take a little longer, but bring in the change.
Takes a lot longer than
Now
little
tell
longer.
me,
That is the problem.
do you know that RS has been trying to persuade farmers to change their cropping pattern also?
Yes.
They are doing it.
I know it. I'll give you Punjab ka example. Rice. There should be no reason for Punjab to cultivate rice. Do you know our buffer requirement is 32 million metric tons? Okay. Right now we have 100.2. I mean, 60, 70 million that rats are eating.
Now see for example.
But MSP they are getting.
Now see for example.
Who is suffering?
When Green Revolution came, did Jansangh oppose it? Did any opposition party say it's not wrong, it's waste of water or waste of why Punjab should have rice, etc., etc.? Everybody went together. Unfortunately, now we know that things are changing, economy is changing, farming has to change. Unfortunately, politics, drives over everything else. Where does RSS
So here
come
I'm
into
going
that?
to be very controversial, and even though Ratan might say that this is our conflict resolution, the RSS way, I'm going to quote Imran Khan, what he derisively quoted as Indian cricketers. They don't have killer instinct. I'm going to say this. RSS doesn't have the killer instinct.
See, unfortunately,
When you know what is right, why you should go for a conflict resolution that might take years?
see,
As Keynes said, I don't like the long term. In the long term, we are all dead.
unfortunately, societies, especially multicultural societies like India, are not a playing field. You can't throw sixers, you can't throw bouncers. Modi is a man in a hurry, he's trying to do things in a hurry, but you know what has happened with CA, with farm law, and various other controversies being created. So we need to somehow create a reconciliation atmosphere. That is the way out. Now, I know that it is not one-way traffic. Modi just tried his best. He has reached out people directly, and people have responded. Otherwise, he won't be winning elections like this. People also want change. But even a small spark of 10%, 1% people can create chaos. It has happened continuously. Why are disturbances happening all over India? We know that. So
ये
unless
समझ में नहीं आता इलेक्शन कैसे जीत जाते हैं
क्योंकि
सारी डिस्कशन बंद हो जाती है
क्योंकि लोगों को पता है मोदी जी सही कर रहे हैं, लोगों को पता है यही नेशनल वे ऑफ वर्किंग है. अनफॉर्चुनेटली जो कास्ट पॉलिटिक्स है, द पॉलिटिक्स विच इज बेसिकली थ्राइविंग ऑन confrontation, creates an atmosphere that you cannot implement policies easily. Otherwise, those, if there was, it was Indira Gandhi, probably it may be, another socialist government, those few thousand farmers could have been kicked out from there. But in a democracy, we can't do that. So democracy is definitely the only way out, but in the democracy, you need parties who are mature. As I said, any development, if you look at right from 50s onwards, even policies which are against the RSS and BJP thinking, when there's Jansangh thinking, when dams were built, but everybody supported. Green Revolution, everybody supported. All the efforts of government were supported, though criticized in parliament. That is the only way out. If people simply refuse, we want to believe that governance will be done on the streets. That is what the problem is now, that we want to have governance decided on the streets, not in parliament. That is where the genteel way of dialogues, of conversation, of understanding each other is missing now.
So, before I throw open, to the audience for a lot of questions, and I've kept about 20 minutes for that, so please don't, troll me on that account. Let me quote a few memes to you, because when you talk of genteel, तो उसमें सोशल मीडिया का जो ये होता है कि भैया फिर 303 क्यों दिया आपको? आप कोलिशन गवर्नमेंट चलाते ना 20 पार्टीज के साथ, तब जेंटील हो सकते थे.
फिर तो पॉलिसी बननी नहीं थी ना, वो तो वाजपेयी जी ने ट्राई किया था, पॉलिसीज नहीं बन पाई, क्योंकि वो इतना कोलिशन था कि जो मनमोहन सिंह ने कहा कोलिशन कंपल्शंस, धर्म तो बीजेपी ने कहा था.
अच्छा
कोलिशन कंपल्शंस मनमोहन ने कहा था. मनमोहन सिंह ना कोलिशन के कंपल्शंस है तो उसमें रह जाते हैं. पॉलिसीज की क्लैरिटी है, पॉलिसीज लाई जाती हैं, बिल्स लाई जाते हैं, बहुत सारे पास हो भी गए, निकल भी गए, लोगों को पता भी नहीं है. जो रिफॉर्म्स है लोगों को ध्यान में भी नहीं है उतने रिफॉर्म्स हो गए, क्योंकि लोग लड़ रहे थे, वॉकआउट कर रहे थे. तो उसमें कई बिल पास हो गए जिनकी गिनती नहीं है, बहुत सारे चेंजेस आ गए, कई लॉ स्क्रैप हो गए, बिकॉज पीपल नेवर अंडरस्टूड. अभी का पार्लियामेंट का लेवल देखिए. आई हैव टॉक्ड टू सम वेरी सीनियर पीपल. आई वॉज टॉकिंग टू सीनियर कांग्रेस MP इन दिल्ली. He said, मुझे तो वैसे लोग दिखते ही नहीं पार्लियामेंट में जो सोच सकते हैं, जो बात कर सकते हैं. He's a Congress MP. He said, I don't know what kind of debate we do today. There are no people who are ready to.
He's talking about his party.
Every party. I mean, he won't say his party, but he said, I'm disappointed. He's a multiple time MP. He said, I'm so disappointed. Look at the qualities of people who have become MPs, who are lawmakers. So this is the quality of MPs who only shout, who only walk out. How do you expect to have a cooperative environment? So with 303, what has happened is that there are laws which are passed by sheer force of majority. Whether you like it or not, that is the only way. But still we have to take people along, as some people point out that you have got 40% votes, 60% are against you. So,
Okay, so
whether they are in the parliament or not, but we have to take care of those people who get instigated. For example, Kashmir files I talked about. People come out and say, there are still people who can't say propaganda. And उनके एक कश्मीरी लड़की कहती है मेरी भांजी को प्रोपेगेंडा है. So if that is, you are so brainwashed that you can't see the truth. You see the kind of work still required by RSS or by anybody else who wants to educate people.
Right. So the way I think we can structure the questions is we can take sets of questions on particular topics. So the first one would be economics. First of all, maybe we can have a show of hands as to how many of you feel that the RSS and the BJP is actually, the way of thinking as far as economics is concerned, is left wing. How many of you believe that? Okay. Not. Am I not audible? Yeah, so how many of you believe that the BJP and the RSS's way of thinking about economy is left wing? Would you say that's 30%?
Yeah.
Nehruvian. Okay, how many of you feel it is Nehruvian? Okay. So we can start off with any questions that you may have. You can pass around that gentleman, please. There. Please address it to Ratan and be very specific about your question, please. You want
to comment or you want to ask question? Because a lot of time what happens, people want to comment and give their own gyan. So you are welcome to give gyan. Yeah. I would request the questions to be brief so more people can, speak.
Basically, on formulas, I agree with both Ratan and Anand. See, RSS should work with farmers and educate farmers, and they should support marketing their products and different ways of farming, like micro irrigation, integrated farming. RSS has to take it seriously to the farmers rather than to confront with politicians and anti-national elements. RSS has to take it very seriously. And agriculture is the backbone of the Indian economy, not multinationals or corporates.
So you want me to answer or you are just giving advice?
No, it's a suggestion. RSS take it very seriously.
See, point is RSS doesn't do it. As I said, RSS got a large number of organizations. It is part of Bharatiya Kisan Sangh who has to talk about it. There are other farmer FPOs which can talk about it, and they have to talk about it openly. And as I said, that particular problem lay only in one part of Bharat, a section of those people who are very voluble, very agitated, and very violent. So to say, you can't put that across, as you already know that nearly 86% supported. How much to bow down to the violent elements? What price should we pay for law and order, for taking people along? That is the question. Question is not whether RSS should go to A or B or whether Modi should speak to A or B. Point is, how much can we bend or to accommodate people who are out to create ruckus in the society, who are very small, minuscule minority? Disturbances can be created by a very small minority. Whether we should be firmly using police boots or lathi or whatever, or we should persuade them to see their own way. Now, for example, now today Punjab is asking for money. There is no money. Punjab from number 2 has dropped to number 16 today in economics. Should Punjabis not look at it? I am a Punjabi, by the way. I have seen a rise of Punjab from sand dunes in my area to green farms and to suffering farmers who don't know how to carry on. I have seen the whole cycle. But does the government see the cycle? Do the politicians see the cycle, or are they only making money? Politicians there are worth thousands of crores. But everybody wants to go out. Nobody wants to live in Punjab. I know people who are brilliant in the study, they say, nahi, bahar jana hai. That is a single dialogue for every girl or boy. Has any government thought of responding that farmers, big farmers sitting on the border, they have no child staying here. Most of them are in Australia picking fruits there. आप समझ रहे हैं, यहाँ अपनी खेती में बिहारी और यूपी वाला काम कर रहा है, उनका बेटा वहाँ जाकर वही काम कर रहा है ऑस्ट्रेलिया में. ये कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन, इसको समझे बिना, इसके ऊपर सोचे बिना केवल पॉलिटिक्स करेंगे तो पंजाब का फ्यूचर तो डार्क है ही. बाकी देश के अंदर फार्मर मान रहे, दे नो, आई मीन चेन्नई, in the other part of the nation, farmers understand. They understand the gravity of the situation. In Maharashtra, the fort of Sharad Pawar, there also mandis are opposed tooth and nail. They were totally in favor of the new farmer law because in the APMCs, they are looted, exploited. You can see receipts of people selling tons of fruits and tomatoes, and so much amount is removed from cartage, brokerage and all that. They get 10 rupees, 20 rupees for 400 kg of tomato. There are receipts in the net. So this huge contradiction, how the farmers are being fooled by these politicians and creating ruckus, is to be understood. It is not that people can't educate.
Sorry, I gave away my mic, so I think that was a problem. But so here, let's have a show of hands again, because how many of you feel that this government has been woefully weak at dealing with the farmer issue and the illegal blockades? Almost everyone, Ratan. Sir wants to, yes, your question, sir.
No, Modi has been practical.
See, what I am saying, I also would raise the hand in the same manner. I have written articles, I have criticized the government openly on the TV also. That firmness was required. I think whatever reason, right from Shaheen Bagh onwards, there has been approach to somehow, let the people just, weaken themselves out by sitting there for continuously. I was against it at that time also. So to say that it doesn't say discussions to us on RSS, unfortunately, as many times as it goes to BJP. So I would request, if you want to ask me questions, don't ask me Modi questions. Ask me RSS questions, though I can answer, but it will be, I may also be on your side, whether I am criticizing Modi ji or appreciating him.
No, what I'm saying is both RSS and BJP have been...
No, please don't plus RSS, BJP hyphen, don't hyphenate the two. It's a huge mistake you make. Because I have been part of RSS, I have also cooperated with BJP, I know that both are not same. Please don't use hyphens for RSS, BJP. That is the first mistake we do, and that is how the entire discourse goes off way. You start equating. I went to a Litfest and I was supposed to speak about RSS, and the critics simply went on badgering me for what was BJP's policies, because they know RSS ko gali thi kuch nahi hoga. But if you speak against BJP, you might lose tomorrow some office you might get. So, idea is to hammer BJP, RSS, though you want to hammer the BJP. जैसे माँ रहती है ना, गुस्सा किसी और बच्चे को थप्पड़ मारती है, ऐसा हो जाता है.
Yeah, sir, you wanted to ask a question. Please ask questions, no comments.
I'm having one question, sir. It's related to online business.
So you already asked a question?
No.
So you look very similar to the person who asked a question.
I want to know about the RSS view on this particular issue. Like currently we are having the online business, like online platforms like Amazon, Flipkart and many other sellers. In India, we are having many grocery shops, many particular small shops related to clothes, related to grocery and many other shops. Due to these online things and through that shops, there is parallel economy is running. Like many dealers are getting some chunks of the profit, then it will go to some thela wala, then it will, many people will go out to purchase, and like fuchka wala, some other shops, many street vendor will have they benefit when people comes out. But when we are having the online business and they are putting money like Walmart has purchased the Flipkart, if I'm not wrong, in this.
So what's your question?
My question is, what is the RSS view on all these things? Because it is the decentralization. We are talking about the fully capitalism thing.
RSS inspired economic wings or organizations have always opposed big retail against the small retail. They have said empower the small retail traders and they should not be killed by the large malls and large storehouses, etc. And there are way to be found. I mean, there are certain things will come in. E-commerce you can't stop. How to enrich it? There are people who are creating software now to support the local banias. So local neighborhood shops, local neighborhood networks. So that will work. Now, for example, small traders are offering goods delivery at home, just like anybody else. There are delivery options which says कि local बनिए से 10 minute में लाके देंगे, etc. But RSS as a policy has opposed large retail format and huge stores and not opposed e-commerce, but to find ways for smaller traders to adopt that technology. He would have different approach.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is competition. There should be, it's a level playing field for everyone, big or small, it doesn't really matter. But here I want to, because the first question, the first person who made a comment, he said something to the, he said that agriculture is the backbone of Indian economy. Nothing could be further from the truth and nothing could be more disastrous. I mean, I am not a politician, so I can say whatever comes in my mind. In fact, that is one of the reasons why I will never be a politician. But the fact of the matter is that you cannot have 44% of your 515 million strong labor force involved in agriculture and still be a developed or aim to be a developed country. You cannot. You look at any developed country, it is not more than 2 or 3% of your labor force involved in agriculture. Here we have 44% exposed to the elements. 117,000, I don't know how many farmers have committed suicide over the last 20 years. 95% of the farmers are not insured. It's a disastrous sector. And at the end of it all, it contributes only 12.5 to 13% to our GDP. So it should not be the backbone of our economy. If we need to be developed, if we want to be a developed $5 trillion economy, we have to move away from agriculture. But I dare any politician to say this, that agriculture is a disaster for our country. We have to move away. We have to inject flexibility in the economy. No politician will ever say this if he wants to win, he or she wants to win the election anyway. So any other question?
Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, sir. The mic there, please. If you can pass the mic there.
Yeah, fine.
Oh, yes. Oh, great, great.
Before Anand throws his spanner in the works, I will just say that the first book on demographic changes in India was written in Chennai. MRB is not there. He would remember the name of the think tank. Yeah. Yes, Center for Policy Studies. It was done, I think, somewhere in 1990. And they have predicted the change in the population in coming years. That is why we talk of population control measures, or that is the reason. So definitely, it is given as taken that as long as Hindus are majority or near majority, I would say even if 70% can't guarantee it, this nation is secular. Wherever there is Hindu in minority, secularism doesn't exist even today. Forget tomorrow. And demographic challenge is real. It is not debatable. People give different, figures that fertility rate of Muslims is going down, Hindus is going down further, ultimately it will match, etc., etc. But as long as Hindu culture survives, secularism survives in India, jahan Hindu ghata hai, jaise desh bata, wherever Hindu has become minority, that part is cut off from the nation. Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, we have so many proofs. There is no debate about that. And population measures have to be taken, because if India has to thrive and survive today, every policy fails on what front? Sheer population pressure. You can run 100 more trains, you can run 200 more flights, you can make bigger highways, whatever we want to do, unless population is brought to some controllable check and we are able to put that kind of sense of duty in people, there is a real risk. I mean, people can debate, people can keep on discussing, but these are facts seen through last 100 years. There is no discussion required.
Okay, 4 points, very quick points on that. One, if I go just by the data, then the TFR, which is the total fertility rates of both Hindus and Muslims, have really come down over the last 20 years. If we go by the decadal rate of population, then the Muslim decadal rate is also going down dramatically. So the question is not about increasing Muslim or increasing Hindu population. The question is the shift or demography of the population. There is no doubt that wherever you would have less and less of Hindu population and more of Muslim population, you would have, as a concept, people disbelieving in the constitution and the laws. You can see it in the Kashmir Valley. You can see it in many areas right now, as Ratan said, where the Muslim population is 70%. In fact, in Kerala, it is approaching 93%. And you've seen what happened is almost ethnic cleansing in Kerala in UP. UP is the god of supposedly Hindu Virat, this thing, but you can't do anything about it because, there is no solution to that. The second aspect which I wanted to bring out was, and here it is, no doubt it is controversial, that I personally do, of course, India, we have a population problem. But the problem is that we have allowed politicians to use that as an excuse. If you look at the data, India ranks number 7th in the terms of population per square mile of arable land. So I'm not talking of including deserts land or anything like that. In land which can be affably populated by people, India ranks 7th. Japan is higher, Netherlands is higher, UK is higher, other countries are higher. Politicians love this excuse, कि अरे भाई हमें सिर्फ 2 बच्चे करने हैं, we are population explosion. No, the problem is optimal use of our resources for our population, and this is where the politicians are failing, not only in the last mile, but in the first mile, in the middle mile. So there are two-pronged problem. One is, yes, the Muslim population is decreasing, so that is not a problem. The issue is that ghettoization of the problem of happening, and I think in that respect, even though at the cost of getting heavily trolled and abused, I recognize and I value what RSS is trying to do. RSS doesn't want ghettoization because RSS has realized if you antagonize 200 million people of your own countrymen, they are going to ghettoize. And what happens when they ghettoize? They will move to areas which have higher and higher Muslim population. And what will happen then? What will happen is that the other communities will move out. And what will happen? You will have hundreds new Pakistans. RSS realizes this. I've talked to people in RSS and they say this is the problem. Population explosion is not the issue. Demographic shift, ghettoization is the issue. So let's get 2 things straight. One, it is not the Muslim increase in population, it is actually decreasing. And 2, it is not population explosion, but optimal use of our resources for the population we have.
Can I ask a question?
Just one point not related directly. I did a YouTube with a Christian, 2 Christian clerics about love jihad problem of Christians we are facing in Kerala. So it is not question of just the community, it's a question of aggression of the community. Should we increase the aggression or should we find points of reconciliation, of coming together? So the Christians who came to me saying that we should put up a joint front of fighting this menace. 4,500 Christian girls of one particular denomination in Kerala have disappeared. And they said we are fighting in an organized manner somehow. Point is that this aggression of communities to overpower others is the problem. If we are able to reconcile and we are able to find space for each other, this population numbers or religion would not be a problem. That is the solution that India had all through years. That is being resisted by the religious bigots, and those are the people you have to get over them.
Here, before I take the last couple of questions, because we're running out of time, I have to, because my good friend Ratan said, if we can do this, if we can do that, problem is, so let me quote to him, Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. Christianity and Islam have distinct enmity against all other religions. They are not satisfied with observing their own religions, but are determined to destroy all other religions. The only way to make peace with them is to embrace their religions. Rabindranath Tagore said this more than 100 years ago. So if you still feel, Ratan, things may change, I have a, Brooklyn Bridge to sell to you. But a couple of questions, last question, yes. He's been raising hands, yes, gentlemen, yes. Okay. Or are you not loud enough? Yes.
See, one thing that has to be added is that what Rabindranath Tagore said in that situation, what RSS is today is based on today's strength of Hindu society, or the way RSS wants to strengthen the Indian society. So compulsions are there, but at the same time RSS believes, because if Hindu society becomes strong and strengthened, others will, come to respect the society and behave that way. That is RSS conviction. If the struggle is the way, if the conflict is the way, it will happen. It happened in 47, it may happen again. So is the society ready for that? That is a question I raise. So the strength of the Hindu society guarantees that other will fall in line with what it thinks. That is the way out, I think.
Bit loud enough, sir. You need to be a member of parliament to be loud enough without the mic.
Well, good afternoon to both of you. So I'll ask my question in 30 seconds. First of all, it's a big fan moment for you, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, but fan moment for me. And my question to Ratan Sharda ji is, my name is Kapil Naik and I'm from Jammu Kashmir Studies Center. And the only issues that I personally believe that is left in Jammu and Kashmir is Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And in your personal wisdom, as Dr. Anand Ranganathan has just said, that we lack killer instinct. Do you think giving permission to establishing Balochistan embassy in Delhi is one way of showing that killer instinct, and one step ahead in being proactive in dismantling Pakistan into 4 pieces for eternal peace in India? Do you think that's the...
Again, you are asking a question meant for BJP government, not to RSS. So
Well,
since Anand Ranganathan, no, see, firmness of RSS is known. For Jammu Kashmir, the firmness of RSS stand finally won the day. Please understand this. 370 went because RSS consistently followed it all through. JKC exposed the duplicity of Citizenship Act, 35A, 370 continuously for years together. You are part of JKC, you know that. That is firmness. Firmness is not, showing your danda everywhere. Firmness is sticking to your point, putting it forcefully and making people change their view. And we did it. POJK was called POK. Who made it POJK? JKSC. People understood that there is also your Gilead Pakistan. Nobody talked. Arun Kumarji talked about it first of all, way back in 2002-03. So that is the firmness. If you think that POJK can be won over, Balochistan can be won over by me declaring here that okay, Balochistan by embassy calling, I'm sorry, that is not the way. That is not how diplomacy is done. But since he's a freewheeler, he can say anything. I would request Anand to give you response.
Maybe that should be fine.
But in all honesty, I have learned so much about Jammu and Kashmir and the problem in 370 from Ratan and from RSS. The first time I heard about the rampant, shameless hypocrisy of the politicians who for 70 years trampled on the freedom of speech and expression and human rights of Dalits, Gurkhas, Sikhs, women, homosexuals, was because of Article 370, was because of what Ratan said, and I have acknowledged it, Ratan. I've thanked you publicly for that. So, yes, on that, it is Ratan 1, Anand 0. Last question. Yes, madam. Yeah.
Very basic question. The children of today or the next generation need to know the value of an organization like RSS. And I'm a mother of 2 teenage girls. So if I were to tell them what the crux of RSS is, so that they understand and start understanding the value of it, how do you think I should express it to them?
I'm sorry, that's a BJP question, not an RSS question. I had to get back.
See, actually, I would say we would rather begin by, educating our children on the basics of Hindu Dharma, which is missing today in our homes, because we don't have time, because parents themselves don't know. So beginning is to see, Sangh has started a activity called Kutumba Prabodhan, basically enriching the value system of the family and importance of family and giving sanskaras to the kids. That is the first step. RSS Shaka comes next. So giving them the information about the rich cultural heritage or spiritual legacy is what will inculcate in them the pride of this particular thing. My wife and a few other women are doing this work in Mumbai. They have taken up there is something called EPW period, I think, what ESW something. In that period, every week they tell them about the importance of the week, the Hindu calendar, the great leaders of the time, the freedom fighters, the various activity, the history which is not taught in school. And after initial resistance, now kids love it. Their parents love it. The principal loves it. There are now, this has moved to about 10 schools. It has gone to some societies also. So though they may not be able to go to Shaka immediately, once we start giving them the strength of our society, what has happened today, Hindu child goes out, he says, मेरे धर्म में तो कुछ है ही नहीं, बड़ा confusing है, इसको मानो, whom do I worship, how do I worship, why do I worship? There is very instructive YouTube on a girl who converted to Islam and then came back. You must have seen that. So a girl says, I used to ask my parents, why do you do this? What is the ritual? They would never answer. She got confused. She went to college, which was a Muslim-dominated college, a Muslim college. And then she asked the question to the girls. They were very firm about whatever they knew. They started telling her what Islam talks about, this and that. She got convinced because she had no conviction about her own religion. She converted, faced all the hell, then came back to Hindu religion, etc. So if we inculcate these value systems by using school period or within your own homes, then RSS follow automatically. RSS, way back in 76, I asked one of the first generation pracharaks, Bapuram Moghe, who brought Raju Bhaiya to RSS. I said, though no country in the world has an RSS-like organization, and since I was a young boy, I also felt evening I should go to market, have sip tea with people, ogle at girls, and I was sitting in Shaka, doing nothing. So I said, why RSS is required? It was banned at that time, emergency. He said, the day schools and college, the schools start inculcating the right value system and patriotism and values to the children, RSS will not be required. RSS is an artificial growth in the society because these value systems are not inculcated in the schools. So your children may or may not go to Shaka, but if you are able to inculcate these wonderful, things that we have done, right from knowledge system to spiritual systems to our religious practices, then they will automatically become themselves. That is all I can say.
On a much lighter note, just to finish up, because the question's been asked by a lady, I must disclose here that there was a meeting of people who would like to meet Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, I think 2 years ago, and I was one of them. And the question I asked him point blank, he was sitting, and I asked him that, why is it that a woman cannot become the chief of the RSS? So, there is this meme of Robert Redford that goes on for 15 seconds where the camera focuses on Robert Redford, and after 15 seconds, Robert does this. So Mr. Bhagwat did this to me. But
the story is incomplete. Let me complete the story. Because when Bhagwatji wanted to respond, he had already gone. Please sit down.
Thank you, sir.
To complete his very important statement, when he asked this, Mohanji said, where is Anand who asked the question? He had already vanished. So he said, that women and men organization in RSS are running parallel. The day women organization feels that we don't need separate existence, we want to be part of RSS, we will consider it. But it is for the women to decide whether they want to be part of RSS or not. Secondly, RSS Shakha may not have women. Every other organization of RSS has many more women than all the women organizations put together in India today, including the best possible Pragatishil women and all that. So, and to take it further, in UK already Rashtra Sevika Samiti of that country and HSS have merged already. In USA, half the units in USA have become one. I went to a camp where half the instructors were women, half the instructors were men. The joint secretary is woman, the secretary is man. So those things are already happening, experiments happening in USA. The Samiti, when it decides to merge, wants to merge with Sangh, it will be open. Then a woman can become a Sarsangh Chalak also. So it is not question of, asking rhetorical questions. When RSS was born at that time, what was the man-woman relationship in the organizations, in the society, in the social organizations, and how it has moved on. So as one of the very senior Pracharaks used to say, there is no woman in Shakha, but there are women in Sangha. But now even that has changed. As I said, I gave example of HSS USA, HSS UK. After all, they are inspirations from RSS. And in RSS also, these things are happening. When I was a young, instructor, when girls used to come to Shaka, I would say, okay, let them play. Or in the festivals, if mothers came, I would ask them to stand in the queue. There are some old workers that, kya kar rahe? What are you doing? Why women are in the Shaka? But we said, fine, what's the problem? So things change. We are a slow changing society. If we accept that, then we accept our RSS viewpoint.
And I think to end this whole thing, that is the beauty, I would say, of Hinduism. That is, it is so close to how you would describe evolution or science, to assimilate mutations, to keep on mutating. And that is how you would increase the diversity and ultimately survive. So on that note, I would profusely like to thank my wonderful friend, dear friend Ratan, for this wonderful discussion. And I thank you as an audience for being so receptive. Thank you so much. JNU, this is colored red.